You're listening to Pagan Mom Podcast. I am so glad that you're joining me today, and this is a podcast where you can come to indulge in various topics regarding paganism in our modern world, merging present and past. Be sure never to miss an episode by subscribing if you feel so inclined. I'd be very grateful. Thank you. Now let's get on with it.
Welcome back to another episode, all of you beautiful souls. I hope you all have had a wonderful weekend. I sure did, because Friday night was a very important night for me, since it was Majafton, or Valborgsmässoafton as it's called here in Sweden. It's also called Beltane in Celtic pagan terms. And this night is and will always be very important and special to me personally in my spiritual journey and practice. So I have celebrated this in my way, in my solitude, like I usually do. But sometimes I go to a big fire as well, which we normally light up here in Sweden, and we sing and dance around it. But COVID has naturally come in the way of this, and no fires are being lit this year. Anyways, this episode is not going to be about Majafton, so let's get down to business, shall we? And before you listen further though, I just want to mention that it could be a good idea to listen to part 1 first before you listen to this episode, since I can mention certain terms in this one that can be hard to understand if you haven't listened to that episode. If I were to explain it all in this one too, it would be half a day's episode, so go listen to part 1 first so you know the different terms that I might use at times. Okay, so this is the second part of the topic meditation, and in today's episode I'm going to describe what I call a basic meditation. I will also go through how to practically perform a basic meditation with runes and crystals, as well as using that practice for communication with deities, spirits, ancestors, or other entities. In the introduction, I mentioned that it's important to begin with learning how to clear the mind first in meditation, and I'm going to explain why that is so important. Clearing the mind is the very basic of the basics when it comes to meditation, and it's also the very first thing that you should learn, in my opinion, before you try to do anything else in meditative state. Some days it's easier, and some days it's just not possible, and that is okay too. Never force anything. And it's not that you're bad at it if you don't succeed. Never think that. There's so many pagans out there that have come to me for advice with this feeling of failure and that they want to give up because they don't have patience and they think that they can't do it no matter what. And I just want to say to you all, don't give up on trying. There's a lot of factors that plays into why it's not easy every time. So give yourself a break and don't feel bad if it doesn't work. I have those moments too at times, and I'm an experienced practitioner. If it doesn't work, then I just leave it be and try another time. So what I'm saying is that even if I am an experienced person, it doesn't mean that I can do it perfectly every time, and neither should you have that expectation of yourself. Whether you're a beginner or experienced, don't give up on trying. You don't want your own thoughts and imagination to mix in with the information that you're getting from whatever it is that you're communicating with. You want to be a clear channel. Think of it as a phone call. You can hear better if there wasn't any background noises, right? Well, your thoughts and sometimes your imagination are the background noise, and it can easily mix into the information that you're getting and twist things up a bit, making the messages or visions into something that it maybe wasn't meant to be. It could become purely fantasy, for example. And don't get me wrong though, our imagination is beneficial and it's a tool in a way, but you cannot let it get in the way and cloud the information that you're getting. You have to let whatever it is that you're communicating with to use your imagination instead in a way, because that is the way that you can understand what they're saying to you. It's how our brain can process the information given, because we operate differently in our physical form. How do you still your mind then? It can be a bit tricky if you haven't done it before, and I guarantee that the first times you try, your mind will wander all over the place. This can be hard even for us who are very experienced, as I mentioned before. The following that I'm going to suggest is the practice I do myself, and this is my personal method that I find works for me. Now, there's loads of different methods out there for sure, but I'm confident that this method will work very well for most people as well. And if it doesn't work for you, then there's loads of other techniques and methods that can suit you better. And I also want to add that you will develop your own technique and method for this practice. as I have, with time as you're learning and practicing it, because you will learn about how you yourself work and function when doing it. So first of all, be sure to be somewhere you're totally comfortable, whether it's in sitting position in your sofa or in the warrior position in yoga class. It's personal and totally up to you when you feel you can sort of disconnect and get into the zone. You could be knitting for all I know, if that is what makes you feel the most relaxed. So it can be whatever and however. It's very personal. I mentioned different tools in the part 1 episode, and before you begin the clearing of the mind exercise, it could be beneficial to cleanse your space and yourself first, either with some cleansing herbs like white sage or woods like Palo Santo or crystals, sounds, and so on. There's loads of cleansing tools and methods to use, which I'm going to dedicate an entire episode to talk about in the future. And I'm going to talk about all of the different reasons for why cleansing is needed and beneficial as well in it. An entire how to cleanse episode, basically. Now, cleansing isn't something that is required if you're only practicing to clear your mind. In other words, you don't have to do this every time you practice this specific exercise only, but it can be a beneficial preparation both mentally and energetically, especially if you're new to it and trying to get started, or if you just feel you need it. So choose your comfy place, and when you have then found your place, maybe light some candles and take your cleansing herbs, woods, or whatever you have chosen to use, and cleanse the space. Then cleanse yourself. After that is done, take your position and begin to take deep breaths. Listen to yourself breathing. Then listen to every thought that goes through your mind and let them go. Don't fight your thoughts. Allow them. Allow them to flash by one until there's no more thoughts left. This is how I do it personally. If you want a more graphic explanation, I would say that you can, for example, think of it as like you're flipping through an old-fashioned photo album, where the pictures on the pages are your thoughts. Flip the pages, look at the pictures on each page, and flip until you get to the end of the album. And that's when you're entering the so-called zone, where there's no more pages and pictures, just stillness. Some people might see colors, shapes, or lights at this point, and for some it's just dark. Sometimes it's a combination of all of those things too. It's very individual, and this can take a little time, and especially if you're totally new to this, so don't put any pressure on yourself that this is going to be all perfect the first time. It can take many tries until you get a hang of it. And even if you do, and even if you're experienced, it won't go perfectly all the time. Sometimes just don't and try another time. But never give up. And advice is that you put a timer on for how long you're gonna do it for. And in my opinion, it's good if you start with 5 to 10 minutes and that you practice this once every day for a week or maybe longer until you feel that you're getting a hang on it. Some people might want to set up a schedule for when to do the exercise, and some people prefer to do it as they get an opportunity to do so spontaneously. And sometimes maybe both. As a parent, planning for doing this kind of stuff isn't easy, so I might set up a preliminary time for sitting myself down. But I am very flexible, so I can do it very spontaneously as well. I usually use the moments that kiddo is asleep to do my work. So to all of you fellow pagan parents out there, don't feel the pressure to do it on a certain time, and that it has to be going just perfectly when you do. Take it as it comes. And if it doesn't work out, then it's not the end of the world, and there's nothing wrong with you if you can't get all relaxed and all. It's hard getting time for self-care as it is as a parent, and when we do, we feel certain pressure that we have to do this and it has to work out now, when the baby sleeps or whatever. Because we don't know when we'll get the opportunity again. But please don't stress. Just get on it another time. So let's talk about going further in the meditation. So what's a basic kind of meditation then to a pagan? It can, for example, in my opinion, be when you're choosing to focus on something to meditate on, which can be various things. It can be a crystal, it can be a rune, or another object of some sort. Or it can be for communicating purposes. That is a basic meditation, in my opinion. I do prefer passive meditation for basic ones, and I explained what passive meditation is and other terms too in Meditation Part 1, an introduction. So go listen to that if you don't know what that is. And I also like to have candles and incense going and having crystals around me. So let's say, for example, that you're curious about the runes and you want to someday be able to work with them spiritually in various ways. The practice of basic meditation can help you with understanding the runes by feeling them energetically. It's essential to get a feel for them when you study them, since they vibrate on an energetic level in my experience. The runes are incredibly powerful, and almost entity-like from what I have experienced myself. If you don't acknowledge the energetical aspects of the runes by only limiting yourself to what is written in books, things can go wrong. And once you have felt them, you'll be able to receive more information that books just don't give. When you only have the written knowledge to base yourself on, you're missing out on 50% of the experience. Balance is of the essence. And to do this, the use of basic meditation is absolutely essential. I recommend that you don't read about the runes in books before you have felt them for yourself in meditation. This is how I personally have done, and I learned so much from it. Without reading books on them first, I didn't have a pre-existing mindset of what each rune should mean or feel like energetically going into my meditation. And in that way, the information given to me from the runes themselves wasn't clouded by pre-existing conceptions of them. After I felt them out, I did my research through books and other sources. The mix of the two ways are a winning concept in my book, and I'm gonna give you an example of how a basic meditation can be like to getting to know the runes energetically. And by the way, before you do this, don't forget to do the cleansing of the mind exercise. So the example goes like this. Hold the rune you want to learn about in your hands or visualize the symbol in your mind in the meditation. Or both. It's your choice how you do this. You can, for example, get visions, physical sensations, different feelings, scents, and much more. The ways can vary a great deal. Try to write down all the information the rune is giving you. This is what I call a basic meditation for getting to know the runes energetically. Don't meditate on several runes in one session. Only concentrate on one specific rune in each meditation session. Maybe do one session per day or one session per week. The choice is yours, but don't try to do them all in one session. That could lead to overload, as I call it, amongst other things, since the runes are very powerful and strong. A basic meditation can also help with getting to know crystals if you're into that. My suggestion is that you do the same with crystals as you do with the runes. Meditate on the crystal you're curious to learn about. Hold it in your hands as you're meditating. What does it feel like? What are the vibes? Do you get any physical sensations? Scents? What's the energies of it? And so on. Write down. Meditate on them to feel them out before you study them in the books. And when you have, then turn to the written sources. Compare and study. Now let's talk about another scenario. And let's say that you're a new pagan or inexperienced in this type of work, and you want to reach out and communicate with your guides, deities, or ancestors, for example. Then grab your notebook and pen and reach out to them using basic meditation. First thing is that you need to make sure you have cleansed your space and yourself properly so that you won't get any unwanted energies to interfere in any way, shape, or form. And I'm gonna make another episode for cleansing methods and such, so keep an eye out if you want to know about that stuff. I'm gonna talk about what things you can use for that and how, and so on. Anyways, let's continue. You want to make sure that only energies you want to communicate with are allowed to enter your space. That's why you do the cleansing and all. And the second thing is that you need to create an energetical barrier around yourself and your space. I will talk more about creating these barriers and more protective ways in future episodes, so I won't dig too deep into that right now in this one. After you have done these preparations properly, you can do a physical protective barrier as well. And I'm going to address that as well in a future episode. Then after all of that is done, you begin to clear your mind and all that jazz and enter the zone. Then invite whatever it is that you want to communicate with. Now you will have to allow these energies to stream to you. Try not to analyze the information you're given from whatever it is that you seek to communicate with. And if you feel you're able to, write down the information that is given to you so you won't forget anything when it's all done with. But as it's happening, just let it flow. Just allow the information to come and by all means communicate back, and then later on you can analyze it all you want after you've exited the meditation. Then, after you're done, thank whatever was in contact with you and end the connection. You can think of it as a lamp that has been turned on when you were in the zone, and now you have to turn the light off again. Then take the barrier down as you're finishing the meditation session off. Take your time to come out of it. We are all different as people when it comes to how we prefer to practice these things, and all of what I have said in this episode is merely suggestions based on my own practice and experiences. The choice is always up to the individual. And let me also say that it's not bad at all in not being able to do or want to do it the ways that I'm doing it. And that reminds me a little of a story about Odin and Freya. Odin wanted to learn the art of Seidr, and Freya was willing to teach him. He got very good at it. But Freya just had the natural abilities for this. It just came natural to her since she is Vanir. Odin is, however, Aesir, and they don't have those same natural powers and abilities. But that doesn't mean that they can't get good at it or learn it. So don't feel you need to be or practice just like me just because I'm able to do it in a certain way. We all have our own preferences and abilities. We have now reached the end of this episode. And I hope you guys have gotten an idea of what a basic meditation can be like. And remember, no matter what we as public figures are saying, it's uniquely your practices in the end. And what we people say in the media should only be taken as friendly advice and help along your own personal journey. And remember, Norse paganism is a path that is in fact based on spiritual experiences. So use meditation in addition to books in your studies. It's so important for a well-rounded form of studies when you're walking any pagan path. If you like this podcast, do consider to subscribe, follow, share, and all that jazz. I'd appreciate that with all of my heart. And if you want to support me and the pod, then consider to join the family and become a patron on my Patreon. All links are listed in the description box. And I want to take a moment to thank my existing patrons, Anthony and Natasha. I'm so grateful and honored you are on board this long ship. So until next time, lots of love.